Hello, and welcome back to the Greystone Manor podcast. I am ProPro, and we are here to discuss the Color With Me Sacred Geometric Shapes series that was recently released on our YouTube page. So I know I don't use the podcast as often, but I really like using this podcast as a space to verbally communicate the reason behind some of the series that I've been putting out on our channel. And for this episode, I really want to talk about the coloring books and the coloring that I have done. And I would really like to just kind of explain kind of where we're going next for the next set of coloring series. First, this coloring book was a work of boredom, kind of. So in 2024, when I was producing Fox and Toad magazine, during the down moments I had, or the moments where I was kind of hitting creative burnout, I started to create my own coloring books. And this was just kind of like a side little project, a little side boost of dopamine and serotonin and everything that I could use for my brain to get it creative. So in 2025, when I decided to pause the publication of Fox Toad magazine, mostly for legal purposes, because I want to make sure that, everybody that is submitting written forms of content and even photographs, I want to make sure everything is protected properly and everything is US based. So that was a whole fun conundrum to get through, but I'll save that for another podcast. So my thought process was, if I'm not producing a magazine, how do I stay relevant as a indie publishing company? And I looked at these projects I had sitting in Canva and I was like, you know what? Maybe I should just print the coloring books. It was a very simple yet bold decision, I feel like, on my end. One that was not made lightly, because I did discuss this with my business partner first, who is my best friend. Of course, they were super supportive. They were like, you should have done this already. And then I did speak to my family, and my mom and my sister and I ended up having a 2-hour conversation about how these coloring books are going to look. How are they going to be bound? How many pages should they have? How should I circulate them and try to sell them? And how should I wholesale them? It was entertaining, and it was really awesome being able to see my mother and my sister really get into that like entrepreneur or business headspace. Considering that, my mom does like a small part-time job, desk work, and my sister is in the Air Force. So it was interesting hearing their two different perspectives on a coloring book. And one of those discussions that we had dealt with the binding of the coloring book. So there are, at least with the printer that I use, they are local to Lancaster, Pennsylvania. They offer a perfect bound, which is kind of pushing all the pages together, stitching, and then gluing. Or sometimes you don't even need to pay for that stitching because there are stitches that are very expensive. There's spiral bound, and then there's staple bound. And out of those three options, I knew that perfect bound, which is the glue version, wasn't going to work for a coloring book, because when people are coloring, I get the feeling you're going to be rough on the coloring book. So I was like, that's out. My business partner suggested a spiral bound. However, first of all, they suggested spiral bound because they are left-handed when they color. However, the spiral would be on the left-hand side and all the images were on the right-hand side. So even if we did a spiral bound, left-handed people would still have difficulty coloring in this coloring book, or at least running into that seam. So then we were left with the staple bound option, which is the cheapest one. There is a risk of not having it look aesthetically pretty, maybe not having it like hold up to some of the other published coloring books out there. However, the staple bound, because it came in cheap, it fit our budget. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to take the risk. We're going to do a staple bound with just a simple gloss cover, and then we're going to make the pages on the inside thicker. So I wanted to make sure that our money went a little further on the thickness of the pages. And I'm so glad we did that because the pages on the inside are 80 pounds, which means it can hold up to a good marker. Now, when it comes to the, what are they called? I think they're alcohol based markers, the ones that are very popular on TikTok and Instagram right now. These pages will hold up to them slightly, but they still have a little bit of bleed through. At least it doesn't get to the other graphic or the other image, thankfully. However, I am noticing there is some more bleed through with that. But that is how this coloring book came to be. When it came time for me to advertise it and sell it, I had no idea what I was doing. I think I've discussed this in previous podcast episodes, but I am not the best at marketing or distribution, and yet I need those skills for running an indie publishing company. So, this is where some of the discussion I had with my mom and my sister came in, which was, reaching out to uh, communities, groups, organizations to see if they were willing to purchase these coloring books at a wholesale price. The other thing I did was I offered it on our Etsy at wholesale. So it already includes like the shipping and everything too. And I did reach out to a few school districts that were local, but they were just not looking for a coloring book at that time. And I'm assuming it had to do with like budgeting. A lot of the budgeting stuff for schools usually happens right around July or August. And by the time I was pitching this, it was already September. Then the next hurdle for myself with these coloring books was, what do I do with them? Because I love coloring, but I usually keep that as like a private hobby because in the past it has been looked at as maybe childish or unbecoming of somebody who's trying to build a business of their own. And these are just like my own critical thoughts. Some of them are pulled from society and the collective, but most of the time I'm like my own harsh critic when it comes to this. So I was like, well, I enjoy coloring. Coloring makes me relax. I've written articles about coloring, so I may as well just color. And I thought this would be a good way to show off the pages that we currently have in these books. So they are all three of my coloring books that I released. They are 52 pages cover to cover with 23 images on the inside with 23 color palette pages. And I've figured, well, you can't really divide 23 in half because then there's like a half page. So I decided, let's do 12 pages. Let's show off 12 pages of each one of my coloring books, and we'll just post it how I used to do my coloring for Fox and Toad magazine. And when I started this, I was excited, I was nervous, and then it became, I need this. Like, I need to be doing this once a week because coming into the holidays, there was a lot of pressure and financial stress and travel. So I was actually looking forward to making those coloring videos. Hopefully, everybody that did see them enjoyed them and sat back and just listened to the music. You don't even necessarily have to watch the coloring. However, when I was doing all of that, it kind of resparked that creativity that I need to keep going. So, for example, when I was coloring let me flip to it. When I was coloring the triangle page, it's mostly like yellow triangles with purple, blue, and pinkish kind of colors. When I got to this page and I started coloring it, I wasn't sure I wanted to use bright colors. So I forced myself to use bright colors. And in doing so, it increased my happiness. It increased my hunger, surprisingly. And it made me feel grounded. Like, it made me feel grounded in a very happy, joyful, head in the clouds way, but my feet were firm on the ground, such as, I know after this, we're going to go into editing. And after that, I'm going to go into writing 2 more articles for the magazine. It was really nice clarity that I had. And it reminded me in that moment in 2024 when I was hitting small little burnouts and I started creating these coloring books. That is almost like what these coloring books are providing for me right now as I'm working on other projects with the Greystone Manor. And I really hope that this is something that other people can utilize as a tool for that exact purpose, because the images are so big. You can get this done within maybe 30 minutes to an hour at most. Some of the pages, oh my gosh, the page that had a bunch of little pebbles on it and I split the colors in half, that took about an hour and a half. That was a little long for me, but 30 minutes to an hour for a creative outlet, I believe that's pretty manageable for most people during the week, even if it's just once a week, like what I was doing. And the best part, just like a little mini brag, is the durability of this coloring book is so good. I have tossed it around, thrown it around. I have opened it fully, like twisted the front cover all the way around, and this thing is holding up. Like, I am so surprised a staple bound coloring book is really holding up to the challenge of everyday life and stressors of moving around constantly. So, hopefully, that is some good news for anybody that is looking to get into coloring. It does not have to be expensive like what some influencers are putting out there. Our coloring books are affordable and you can use any utensils. And my favorite, just to put this out there, I love Crayola markers, especially the ones that are washable. So if you get it on your hands in between um, business meetings or even in between like the day, you can wash it off so easy from your hands. And I appreciate that. And the markers are so cheap, and Crayola is based in Pennsylvania. So it's just, to me, I feel like it's such a good vibe. Nice quality markers for a pretty cheap price, and a great quality coloring book that we've produced for an amazing price. So if that is something that you're looking into, I would love to see that kind of support. Um, I will be starting our next coloring book. I'm going to do the Harmonious Mandalas because I figured, that's transitioning us into springtime when we get to all the pretty flowers. I'll save that coloring book, the flower one, for our last. So stay tuned next week for another session of coloring, but with mandalas this time instead of our geometric shapes. And with that, I will see you all next week. Bye.